Hello and welcome. You're listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. Now, we've been talking about it. You guys, you liked it. You responded in a huge way to True Crime Tuesday. And we are going to be launching next week with True Crime Tuesday. You'll be able to start checking out True Crime Tuesday. So make sure you go subscribe to it now on iTunes. Look up True Crime Tuesday and also look up on Podcast One for True Crime Tuesday. Subscribe to it, be a part of our community, and never miss another episode. And do us a huge favor. Once you start listening, please make sure on iTunes you rate and review it, because that's going to build it, grow it, make it stronger, and we want to spread the word. So we will be doing True Crime Tuesdays going forward in a whole new show. Not just part of Beyond the Darkness. Beyond the Darkness will be 5 days of the best in paranormal talk radio, and Tuesday you'll get an additional True Crime Tuesday show. It'll be under its own heading, and that's it. So, to kind of lead us into that for next week, we have an interesting topic on hand tonight. We're going to be talking with Rebecca Pittman, her book, The History and Haunting of Lizzie Borden. So we're going to get a little twist to true crime and some haunting all mixed into one little fun nugget. Welcome to the show, Rebecca Pittman. Thank you for being here this evening.
Well, Dave, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your forum with me.
Well, this, I'm fascinated by the story, as many people are. I was introduced to it because I had a massive crush on Elizabeth Montgomery when she was on Bewitched, and I remember watching the movie, and I think I hit puberty when she got naked and started to wash the blood off.
Yeah,
that moment.
Yeah,
in time.
A lot of men love that show.
Yeah, that Lizzie Borden movie with her kind of reintroduced me to reality of life. So that was what was my initial deal, and I remember thinking, oh, would it be cool to go there? I bet it's crazy haunted as a kid. And then my wish came true about 5 years ago or so. We when the last big hurricane went whipping through the East Coast, I was there doing an event with Jeff Belanger, and everybody got out and went home except for me. I got caught in the storm and was stuck at the Lizzie Borden house by myself for a few days.
Wow.
And you have to be careful what you wish for. Because,
yes, you do.
You want to stay the night in a haunted house? Well, you get to stay the night in a haunted house by yourself for a couple of those nights, and it was a creepy, unnerving place just to think of the history and all that went on there. And we had some definitely interesting interaction. What brought you to Lizzie Borden? Why the interest in it?
I think I got hooked on it in junior high. I mean, it's just such a crazy case. And for that era, and for a woman to do something that even in today's era is a brutal double murder.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
I'm sorry. Read the book. No, I'm teasing you. No, that boggles the mind. That and the closed door mystery and the 10-minute window of time and just the audacity that it took to handle everything that came. You can't look away.
Well, I know we're going to go through the history and the hauntings of this story, but let's take it. I mean, there's so much that's been said, so many good documentaries, so many bad documentaries, so many good books, so many lame books that have come out. What made you decide that there was still a story to be told and that you wanted to get in and share this?
Well, this is actually my fourth book in this series. So I go into the top 10 most haunted places in America, and I research them for a year and write about them. And Lizzie Borden, like I said, was always something I was interested in, and I'd read all the books, and I thought, I'm going to take a look. If I can't add anything unique and different, I'll walk away. And I read 5,000 pages of trial transcripts, police reports, witness statements, newspaper archives, and I read them 3 times through. That's 15,000 pages. By the time I was going through the second pass, all this stuff started jumping out. You start noticing the nuances, the lies, why the attorneys phrased it the way they did. And by the time I went through it the third time, I'd found at least 8 new factors, new evidence that had never shown up before, and I backed it up with the trial testimony and the police reports. And I'm very excited that the people in Fall River have embraced it, including the Fall River Historical Society. No one's called me out on it or said that doesn't make sense. And
until tonight.
Oh, well,
No, I'm just
fine.
kidding.
You
I'm
go
kidding.
for it,
No,
Dave.
no.
Let me tell you, I'm 6'2" in Aries, so I'm just saying.
All right, you win. I'll back off, Wonder Woman.
I'm teasing you. But I felt there was all this new things to bring to light that hadn't been put out there before, including 2 murder plots. So.
Wow. All right. Well, let's start at the very beginning, because as Julie Andrews has taught us, that's a very good place to start. I love that line. Stupid and throwaway, but I love it. Let's start there. Talk to me about Lizzie Borden and the Borden family.
The dynamics were bad. I think Lizzie had a sense of abandonment since she was 2 when her mother passed away. A 2-year-old doesn't understand that her mother was taken against her will. She died. She was ill. But for a 2-year-old, there's this suddenly there's this missing figure. So her older sister Emma takes over, raises her, and then Andrew gets married while Lizzie's still very young, and here's this new mother figure in their life. And for a while, everything was fine. Lizzie called her mother. I think it was Emma who felt displaced from the beginning. They immediately sent her away to a boarding school at 16. And so here, all of a sudden, she's away from Lizzie. She feels usurped by this new female figure. And here's Lizzie for the first time without Emma. And I think Emma's hatred was actually worse than Lizzie's. She admitted it on the stand. And when Andrew suddenly started doing things for Abby, giving away property and basically started getting into the girls' inheritance, that's when it all hit the fan. And Lizzie quit calling her mother. They're grown women now, but they suddenly feel betrayed. And it gets ugly.
Well, that was, as I said, I've been in that house. The layout of that house is disturbing.
Isn't that weird?
Right, to have their bedrooms. Okay, literally, once you climb up the front stairs, you get up to the top of the stairs, and off to your left is the room where Abigail Borden was murdered.
Right.
Off to the right, there is the room that the sisters shared, and then at the end, their door goes right into their parents' bedroom, whose headboard was up against their headboard wall. That had to be an awkward situation for back then, too. Oh, God, I wasn't far enough away, and I lived on the other side of the house in the basement, and I didn't want to know. I can't imagine having your headboards 2 inches apart through a crappy plaster wall with a new bride in the home. And then there was this kind of this weird incestuous vibe that's been kind of talked about. Did you find any kind of proof or historical relevance to that story, that there might have been some weirdness with the family?
I think Andrew was all about money. I think it made him a little bit cold and aloof. He did the best for his daughters that he knew how. Suddenly this man is in a house of females, between Bridget and Abby and Emma and Lizzie, and all these hormones are swirling and fights and arguments. The poor guy, all he cared about was cash and figures and accumulating money, which was his undoing in the end, because he was in the middle of a big deal that was about to go down that would have cost Lizzie and Emma the biggest portion of their inheritance. But no, I don't think he cared about that kind of thing. I don't see him that way at all. I think he and Lizzie were very, very close. They fished together. I think she was his little shadow and followed him around in earlier years, but I didn't find anything for that.
Did they try to play any of that angle up in the court case at all, to try to protect Lizzie?
No. They didn't bring it up at all.
That's what's so fascinating to me about this story. There have been so many hands involved in telling it, and it is mutated and turned and twisted, and then you have shows like the A&E show with Christina Ricci, which I guess, the only reality it shared was the name Lizzie Borden.
Oh, my gosh, the body count in that was worse than Hannibal Lecter. I've never seen so many people meet their demise in one series in my life.
Well, then you should have been watching Dexter or The Walking Dead. You'll keep up with that.
That's true.
Okay, but yeah, there's been so many people twisting and turning and pulling on this story, trying to make it their own. And it's really kind of that makes it even a little bit more disturbing to me, the weird stuff people try to inject into the story. And the story seems to stand up on its own as a freak show.
But that's the point. There's so many books out on it. And if you don't feel you have anything fresh or new to add to the actual case, you embellish and you try to sensationalize it so that you can get your book out there. I'm not dissing that, but I spent 5 years on this book. It's 892 pages, and I have a reputation for my integrity and for not putting something in if it's not true. I would rather not have somebody come back later and say, where the heck did you get that? So I made sure everything was backed up. But sure, the sensationalism is what sells. That's Hollywood.
Were they going at the time when this murder happened? And we'll get back into the basics of the story. But I mean, were there quick jumps to share bits and thoughts and gossip of the story, kind of tainting it in the public eye, or was it held in a much, I know when the OJ trial happened, which they often equate the Lizzie Borden situation as the original OJ trial,
right?
Because of the powerhouse attorneys and everything that they had involved. But there was so much gossip and rhetoric and media slanting of stories that you're never quite sure what happened or who was involved in the story. Did that happen with Lizzie's tale as well?
Well, it did, but their first murder suspect was her Uncle John Morse. The day of the murders, it was his name that got put in the papers first.
Okay.
Because he shows up the night before with no luggage. He's kind of a rumply mess. He's kind of a mysterious figure, and he acts really strangely when he supposedly stumbles upon the murders that day. There's 500 people around the house. He claims he didn't notice anything, and he went in the backyard and stood there eating pears. There's people running through the yard and into the barn, and at one time it swelled to 1,000 people. And on the stand, when Attorney Knowlton's incredulous and said, "You didn't see all these people?" He goes, "Nothing that caught my attention, no."
Wow. Well, we'll get into the weirdness of that character in a bit. So you've got the family living in this home. They're well-to-do, but the new wife has got the husband playing loose and goose and changing things and certainly doling away kind of the family fortune from Lizzie and her sister. The one sister sent away. Things are kind of tumultuous in the family, but was there ever a level of hatred that you would have thought up to that point would lead to murder?
Yes, and here's my biggest point. The misconception is that these murders were a spontaneous act of hatred that morning. This thing was planned so far in advance, it's spooky. It was planned from April on. She put things into motion from April on, and I think it was planned even before that with the daylight burglary of Abby's things the year before. This was not spontaneous. She had another dress made that would fit over the murder dress 9 days before the murder. The barn was broken into twice, once in April, once in May, and certain things were taken out. And she had this whole thing figured out, which is that house was just seething with the hatred that she was putting out, sitting up there in her room, overhearing their conversations through the double fireplace, and I believe that's how she eavesdropped on them in the sitting room underneath her. I mean, this has been, and I believe that's a lot of why the house is so haunted. This was not a spontaneous, I've had it, whack. This was planned. And when you have that kind of energy seeping into the walls and everything else, it's going to play back in a residual haunting from time to time.
Take me to the day of the murders, and what was it like? What was going on in Fall River at that time? What time of year was it? And, just kind of put us in the mindset of that.
It was August 4th were the murders. It's always been thought it was the hottest day of the year. It was actually 76 degrees, which may not sound like anything to us. I'm in Colorado, and we get a lot of sunshine. But you have to add the humidity factor to it. So the week before, they'd hit the biggest heat wave they'd ever had. 90 people died, 5 of which were children. It had been just sweltering. So Monday, it had rained. and Bridget was behind one day on all of the duties that she usually does. But Thursday was window washing day. Thursday was the murders, and all the maids were out washing the windows on Thursday. Lizzie knew this. It was a New England habit that Thursday was window washing day. She knew exactly that Bridget would be outside.
And when you said all the maids, you meant in town. It wasn't like they had multiple maids. They just had the one maid.
They had the one maid, but that's why the Kelly maid next door was outside. She was also washing windows.
Okay.
And so the morning of the murders, Lizzie, in my opinion, Tuesday had tried to kill them first with arsenic. She put it in the milk. They got violently ill Tuesday night, Abby and Andrew, threw up from 9 until midnight. Now, you just mentioned the proximity of those two bedrooms. She's sitting in her bedroom, listening to them on the other side of the wall, throwing up, waiting for them to die. That's just chilling to me. And midnight came, and they finally quit throwing up, and they're up and at it the next morning, although they're both still very sick, so the plan didn't work. So she's running around now trying to get more arsenic.
Well, how do we know that she poisoned them? Where is the truth in that other than the fact that they took ill? I mean, it was a time when food spoiled and people didn't prepare things always the best. So it could have been just a touch of food poisoning, couldn't it?
Well, you're going to love this part.
Excellent.
Okay, rub your hands together. This is good stuff. Okay, so Bridget, in her testimony, the doctor sent out Wednesday's milk sample and Thursday's milk. They got new milk every morning. It was delivered to the door from the farm in a milk can. Mm-hmm. Bridget pours the milk into manageable bottles in the ice box, rinses the pail out. It's going to go out again the next day, and they'll replace it with new milk. They got sick Tuesday night, and they're throwing up. Obviously, this is Tuesday's milk, and hang in there with me. But the doctors send away the only milk they can find that's left, which is Wednesday's milk and Thursday's. Thursday's the day of the murder. They sent away the wrong milk. They threw up Tuesday night. Wednesday's milk hadn't shown up yet. And neither had Thursday's. And Bridget, in her testimony, said, I should know I drank the last of it. And Bridget ends up throwing up the morning of the murders in the backyard. If she drank the last of it, there wouldn't have been any Wednesday milk or Thursday milk to send away. She admits she drank the last of what was in there, and I think it was Tuesday's. And then she gets sick. I mean, that's kind of a huge coincidence there. So obviously the poison they sent away for Wednesday and Thursday came back showing no poison in it. Well, it was in Tuesday's milk.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, I follow you completely on that, sure. Especially when the maid is saying, hey, I drank the last of that. There would be nothing left to test.
And here's the other thing. I told you 2 murder plots. The Bordens, Abby and Andrew, were supposed to be staying at their farmhouse in Swansea. Everyone knew it. They were supposed to spend August there, and Lizzie believed that's where they were heading. People in town were surprised to see Andrew and said, thought you were going to be at the farm. And he said, no, I'm having so much trouble at home, I didn't go. Lizzie was away at the time, running around getting her little murder plot in place. She thought they were going to be at the farm Monday morning, 3 days before the murders. I believe she went there and put the arsenic in the milk can, waiting for them at the farm. The farmhands had it ready for them. They knew they were going to start their vacation Monday morning. They didn't go. Now Lizzie's screwed. I believe the arsenic came from the barn on the second break-in when the painter was there mixing green paint. You had to add arsenic to copper to make verdigris green, and she picked green, and I think there was a reason she picked green. But back to what I was talking about, where did I get that? Because the 2 farmhands got sick. When the Bordens didn't show up to the farm rather than waste it, I think they drank it. And now both of the farmhands are sick. And the reason this stands out to me is during the trial, Mr. Eddie, one of the farmhands, told the police that John Morse came over the night before the murders, that Andrew sent him over to see how he was feeling. and that the other farmhand, Alfred, was so sick, he was so indisposed he couldn't see anybody. But during the trial, when the attorneys asked John about his visit to Mr. Eddy, did Andrew send you over to ask how he was? No. He didn't, and even the attorney was surprised. He goes, he didn't send you over with a message to ask how he was? No. Why would you lie about something as innocuous as asking a man how he's feeling? And I believe it's because poison was in the air, John had been the first suspect, and he was going to distance himself from anybody that was sick. That's a very strange trial testimony.
Yeah, that is.
So that's why I think there were two murder plots. And that one didn't work, and now she's used the arsenic she got from the barn when the painter was there, and she's running all over town trying to get some more. Nobody give it to her. Okay, how about prussic acid? By then she's desperate. She went into 3 drugstores and asked for prussic acid, not caring if they were going to recognize her or mention it. Her time was running out because they were going to sign over the deeds to the farms on Wednesday. But they got sick Tuesday night. They pushed it to Thursday, the day of the murders, and she gave up when nobody gave her poison, and she had to kill him with a hatchet.
What was her reasoning for going to 3 different pharmacists looking for this prussic acid?
Because the prussic will kill you immediately. Obviously, the arsenic wasn't working very well. The farmhands didn't die.
What was she telling? You're going into a pharmacist and asking for a very potent poison.
Yeah.
What was her reasoning to them? Was she saying, oh, we've got rats, oh, we've got this, or man, I need to kill my parents, hurry up?
From the testimony from the people she approached, the arsenic, she first said, the first one with Eli Bench, she said, I need 10 cents worth of prussic acid. He goes, ma'am, we can't sell that. It's potent. She goes, I need it to kill moths on a sealskin cape. And she shows him the cape. He goes, I still can't sell it to you. So that was her first thing. From then on, we don't hear that she gave anybody else a reason. She just said, I need prussic acid, and nobody would sell it to her.
Now, in her defense, was prussic acid the go-to to kill moths at the time?
No. They brought all these people to testify that they'd never heard of such a thing, and because it is seal skin, moths can't lay eggs in it. They said that's the stupidest thing they've ever heard. Nobody would buy it for that reason.
Okay. The plot thickens. Interesting. Now, this is all an angle I didn't know about. Okay. So where does she go from here?
Well, when she's in New Bedford 9 days before the murders, the testimony is, and the police went to check out her story, she bought some cheap dress material. The only time she got away from the people she was staying with was an hour and a half on Saturday morning, and she came back with some cheap dress material. A lot of people thought that was supposed to show her alibi for where she sneaked off to. I think it was much more than that. She had a dress made up that was loose. Her dressmaker told under testimony that Lizzie always had her dresses made snug. This one wasn't. Mrs. Churchill described the dress the day of the murders as box pleat. One of the police officers said it had a bosom in the waist, meaning it pooched out in the waist. They were called pigeon dresses back then. And Marshall Hilliard said it was loose-fitting. It's because she had it on over the Bedford cord dress that she murdered Abby in. I believe the plan was to murder Abby, put this new loose-fitting dress on over the bloody one, and walk it out of the house. But Bridget wouldn't go with her. She tried twice to get Bridget to go with her. Bridget wouldn't go, and she didn't want to leave her there alone because if she's found with a dead Abby, she'd hang, and Lizzie couldn't do that to her. And then Andrew came home early, and she's stuck.
All right.
Dun, 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 dun.
But she decided, all right, this is where I'm confused, though. If she was planning on poisoning them.
Right.
How did she know to get a dress made so many days in advance that would fit over her bloodied dress so that she could smuggle the bloodied dress out?
Because I think the plan all along was to poison them so that they're unconscious. It's scary as heck to picture attacking a moving person with a hatchet.
Mm-hmm.
I think she wanted him unconscious or dead, and then she was going to use the hatchet to make it look like a maniac had come in and killed him. To just poison him is too close to home.
But, sure, because if they die of poison, then the focus will go to her. But if it's a brutal, violent murder, how could little Lizzie Borden be involved in that?
Exactly. Okay. But once she'd killed Abby and realized how horrible and awful it was, I think she got nervous and thought, I can't do this. I can't do this to my dad. He's not going to be poisoned. He's going to be looking right at me. I can't do it. And I think she thought, okay, Abby's dead. She's the whole problem here. Now the deeds aren't going to be put in her name. I don't have to kill my dad. He's 70. He's probably not going to be here a whole lot longer. I'm just going to get out of here and we'll leave it with Abby. But Andrew came home early.
So she's still... Here's some of the other weird aspects of this. That and I love your thoughts on this. The maid claimed she heard nothing, although she was washing the windows. I've been in that house. You could fart in the back corner of the garage or in the back corner of the basement and hear it in Lizzie's room. How can you hack somebody to death with a hatchet?
You didn't do that experiment, did you?
I can't neither confirm nor deny that.
Never mind. Moving right along.
Anyway, it must have been a demon. That smell was a demon in the basement.
Oh, that's what it was.
But you could hear somebody clear their throat or cough, right? And you could hear it in other parts of the house. How can you have been outside washing windows and not have heard a woman being pummeled to death with a hatchet?
Because it was a totally different time. The noise on 2nd Street with the horses, the metal trappings, people talking. They asked Mrs. Churchill, who lived next door, with all the noise on 2nd Street, if you yelled to somebody in the next room or tried to talk to them, could they hear you? And she said no. It was so bad. Right behind Lizzie is a stonemason. Bang, 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 all day long, metal on stone, guys sawing wood. The noise was horrendous. And Bridget hadn't started washing the windows yet. She was talking over the fence to a maid, and the sitting room where Abby died was on the other side of the house from where Bridget was. I don't think she heard anything.
Is Lizzie this conscious of the fact that the maid is talking over the fence at this point and not possibly about to look in the window she's about to murder her stepmother in?
Yes, I think she looked down there. I think she had it. I believe Lizzie was planning to kill Abby in Abby's room. She knew she was 10 steps ahead of these people. She knew somebody was going to come to the door at 10 to pick Abby up and take her down to the bank to sign the deeds. It was supposed to look like Abby got called out on a sick call from a friend. So Lizzie had already slid the bolt back on Andrew and Abby's side of the door. She'd taken the key from the sitting room fireplace, gone in their room, slid the bolt back, and was ready. She unhooked her side. She was going to wait for Abby to go in there and change her dress to get ready to go downtown, and I think she was going to attack her there. 2 things went wrong. Abby took too long. She was downstairs talking to Bridget about washing windows, dusting, doing things, and then Bridget stops and talks to the maid so that she's on the wrong side of the house. She's right under Abby's bedroom window. Abby's in the guest room, and Lizzie's finally panicking and thought, I'm just going to have to do it in there. And I believe that's what happened.
So she goes in, and are the first blows even? Is Abby aware that these are coming her way, or is she taken completely by surprise? Because of where the handkerchief was found and what she was doing and the blood spot on the window, they believe she was facing out the window toward Mrs. Churchill's house, which was right by where she was found. I think she was polishing the window with that blue silk handkerchief, that old thing that she used to dust with, when Lizzie came in. I think Lizzie had the hatchet hidden in a stack of freshly folded clothes. They both just brought their laundry up that Bridget had folded. I think the hatchet was in it. She could have done something like, Abby, I think this is your handkerchief laying on top of this pile, and Abby turns to look at it. She whips out the hatchet. The first blow caught her face to face. It caught her on the left side of the head near her ear and opened up a flap on the side of her head.
she bent forward instinctually and tried to cover herself, and I think Lizzie saw Mrs. Churchill right straight across from her. Mrs. Churchill was in her upstairs bedroom window making beds. I think she hurriedly threw the 2 shutters to, and then turned and hit her twice more on the head. This is all borne out by the autopsy. Abby turns and tries to flee, and the only place to go, she's trapped, is toward the bed. And that's when Lizzie hits her right in the nape of the neck between her shoulders, and she goes down. That wound was 4 inches. It went the entire width of the hatchet and was buried 2 inches deep, and she went down. And that's when the rest of the blows just came fast and furious. The autopsy shows they were this way, that way, it was a frenzied attack.
And how many total blows do they assume? I know the old legend and the song, but what was really known about that?
Between 18 and 19. She also had a bruise on her forehead and the bridge of her nose, which shows how hard she face planted into the carpet. Okay. And the blue handkerchief was found just inches from her head. It flew out of her hand when she went down.
We're just getting started, folks. This is a terrifying tale of brutal murder and mischief, and we're talking about Lizzie Borden. For those of you that have watched the documentaries, watched the movies, watched the shows, you've probably been led down a lot of misdirected alleys. Tonight we're going to take a look at real historical accounts and all of the reference and information that our guest Rebecca Pittman has put together as we continue to investigate the history and haunting of Lizzie Borden. We'll do that next on Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
We're back. And again, this is a little bit of a taste of a True Crime Tuesday story for you, because next week, we're back. You get 5 days of Beyond the Darkness and our new show, True Crime Tuesday, in its entirety. It's its entire show, guys. You guys wanted it. You downloaded the past shows in crazy numbers, and was one of the fastest rising episodes we did, those 3 weeks that we did the little test of True Crime Tuesday. And you did what we expected. You blew the doors off. So now we'll be official next week, back with True Crime Tuesday on a weekly basis. You'll get a 1 hour show of true crime and then about a half an hour of dumb crimes, stupid criminals, because we love you here at Beyond the Darkness. Our guest tonight is Rebecca Pittman. Her book, The History and Haunting of Lizzie Borden. We've only gotten part way through the story, kids. We've only started to hear about the death of Abigail Borden, and there's much more twisted, tortured story to share. And then the hauntings, which, Rebecca, I had my own haunting experience there. I'll share that a little bit later on in the show. But
ooh, okay.
So now Abigail's dead. Wouldn't it have made more sense for Lizzie to strip off the dress and put on a clean one than to put a clean one over a dirty one? Because wouldn't that leave blood on the inside of her clean dress?
Yes, but she was going to get rid of both of them. The dress she handed over to the police when they asked her to hand over the dress she had on that day was not the dress she had on. During testimony, several people who spent a lot of time with her while the police were searching the house 10 minutes after the murders said that's not the dress she had on. So she turned over a completely different dress to them. Why?
Oh, Elizabeth Montgomery, what were you thinking?
I know.
Oh, no, I forgot this is a real person, Lizzie Borden. You're horrific. So she murders her stepmother. She thinks it's done. When does her father return, and how is she alerted to that fact?
That's the part that's chilling to me, because she was waiting for Bridget to get the inside windows done on the first floor. Again, this is mind-numbing, tedious routine. Bridget does the same thing every week. So Lizzie figures, okay, she's got maybe 10 more minutes to do the inside sitting room windows, dining room windows, and I'll get her out of here. Lizzie's at the top of the stairs, right where Abby's body is literally a few feet away, when she hears the front doorknob rattle. And she's going, uh-oh. And she peeks down the stairs. Bridget goes to open it, and it's Andrew. He's not supposed to be home until 11. It's 10:40 or 10:45. Bridget undoes the one lock and heads back to do the windows because all the other two locks are usually left open during the day, but not today. So Andrew tries again, can't get in, and she goes back and she's put out. She's trying to get done, and she had a hard time sliding the bolt back and said a bad word. And because of the tenseness of the situation, Lizzie laughed. She's standing at the top of the stairs, seeing Abby under the bed. I think Bridget said the F word, and she realized how appropriate it was to her situation at the moment.
Right.
And she laughed.
Right.
And Bridget heard her, turned around and looked up, couldn't see her, and she let Andrew in. And it just started from there. I mean, I can't even imagine the panic.
So does Andrew, what is his move then? I mean, you would think honey, I'm home, and do a walkthrough, but there's no interest in finding out where Abigail is at that moment?
That's the thing. She didn't show up at the bank, and he went back a couple of times looking for her. So he comes in the door. Bridget's washing windows. Things look normal. Abby's not right there on the first floor. He's thinking, all right, she went out. She's going to realize she went to the wrong bank, and she'll be right back. He goes into the dining room because Bridget's in the sitting room. He don't want to be in there while the maid's cleaning. And he takes out his mail, and he takes out the deed and looks it over. He thinks this is still going to be okay. We're going to get this done. She'll show up any minute. We'll still go down there. Lizzie comes down, walks in the dining room, and said, any mail for me? She claims he said none for you. We don't know. Bridget heard him say respond, but she couldn't tell what he said. Then she hears her saying, Abby got a note for a sick friend and went out. The next thing we know, Andrew heads up to his bedroom. I mean, fast. To probably see if Abby's up there. She's not in the bedroom. And he comes back down, and Bridget has finished the sitting room and has moved into the dining room, and so he goes in and sits in the sitting room chair, pulls out the deed again. Where's Lizzie? She's disappeared again. So the
now
poor
at this
guy.
time, is she wearing the overdress over the bloody dress?
She's got two dresses on.
And the blood is not seeping through to the overdress at this point?
There wasn't as much blood as everybody thought. They even said that on the stand. The coroners and the medical examiner and Dr. Bowen and all of them said they were surprised at how little blood there really was. Most of it was cast off. So there wasn't as much as you thought. But in the book, I do put that I do believe some of it was sticking to the underneath of the other dress. And the thing I also believe is I don't think she could get the big mutton sleeve, the mutton sleeves, they were leg of mutton sleeves poked into that other dress. They were just too big. I think she had to rip them off. I think she also ripped off the lower hem of the Bedford cord dress so that she could wear that other dress over it. Basically, it became a chemise. And if you listen to Alice Russell's statement Sunday morning when Lizzie burned the dress, she said she saw her pulling down pieces of the dress from the cupboard. I think it was the sleeves and the hem, the pieces that she cut away from the dress in order to wear it underneath.
So this woman who spent all this time is really still very clumsy about everything because she's making a lot of mistakes.
Dave, if the planets ever aligned for a murderer, they aligned for Lizzie Borden. It is insane, the timing and what she got away with that day. I mean, split-second timing. So it is. It's insane. I mean, she completely blew the inquest testimony, and she lucked out that they wouldn't admit it into court because it was a mess.
Well, before we get into that, let's get back to the murder. So now what happens to her father? He decides he can't find his wife. All this important stuff is due. I better take a nap on the couch.
He was sitting there reading the documents, and Lizzie suddenly appears from the kitchen into the dining room where Bridget's doing the windows and sets up a little ironing board and starts ironing handkerchiefs and starts planting the seed in Bridget's head, let's get out of here. And she says, "Are you going out?" And Bridget says, "No, I'm not feeling very well." That didn't work. So when Bridget gets through, Lizzie follows her into the kitchen and says, "There's a cheap sale of dress goods at Sargent's, only 8 cents a yard today, and I'm going to have one." But she didn't do anything. She went upstairs to her room. And when she looked back, Lizzie was going back into the dining room. And that's the last time she saw Andrew Borden alive. I think he laid down for a second. He was still sick. This was just, they'd just been really, really sick. All the people that saw him at the bank that morning said he did not look well. I think he laid down for a minute, and that's when Lizzie killed him. I think she put his big Prince Albert overcoat that he brought home and thrown over the arm of the chair in the dining room, buttoned it up. She's 5'4". He's almost 6 feet tall. That coat would have covered her from head to foot, really long sleeves that probably came down to her knuckles. And if she pulled the lapel up, it would have been up to her nose. And she kills him. He got 10 or 11 whacks to the head. Most of the blood was on the parlor door behind him, showing the killer stood just inside the dining room door, didn't come directly behind him so that it wouldn't splatter him, and hit him diagonally. So then she took the coat off, rolled it up, and stuck it under his bloody head. Now, if there's blood on it, it's from the wounds.
Gotcha. All right. So she is still wherewithal. She's still thinking it through.
She was cold and calculated as they come. I mean, she had nerves of steel until Emma came home and it was over. Then she returned to that little girl. Big sister needs to clean all this up. Put me on morphine. Knock me out. I can't handle this now. I felt sorry for Emma.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So the murders are now done. Where is Bridget during the murder of the father?
Okay, you're going to really like this part.
Sure. I like it all.
Okay, well, Bridget typically, now they called lunch dinner. So she was supposed to fix dinner at 11:30. She told him in court, if I had time after my duties before lunch, I would go up to my room and fix my room and rest for a little bit. It's a few minutes before 11 when she goes up the stairs after Lizzie tried to get her to leave and she wouldn't. She goes up to her room, and the newspaper reports, and her first report to the police, she went up and was doing, the windows in the attic and her own attic window that looked down over the backyard. When the police said, "Did you see anybody around this morning?" And she said, "No, and I didn't see anybody from my window either." That's in the police reports. There's 4 or 5 newspaper articles that wrote what she said, that she was even yelled down to one of the maids on the sidewalk below while she was cleaning the front attic window overlooking the front street, lowering windows up and down, cleaning. And she was doing this while Andrew was being murdered 2 floors beneath her. Here's the most amazing thing to me. During the trial testimony, the preliminary hearing, Attorney Knowlton, who's the prosecuting attorney, gets her away from the window. He leads her like nothing I've ever seen in my life, and he said, "You did not look out that window. You did not, did you?" And she said no. All these reports, all these newspaper things, he said, "You just laid right on the bed, didn't you?" From that point forward, there's no mention of washing windows, only that she went up to take a nap before lunch. What in the world did she see out that window that he had to lead her away from?
This is the prosecuting attorney?
Yes.
Wait, that means they want to nail Lizzie.
Right. You're a smart guy.
Well,
yes.
Not necessarily, but so now I'm really confused. Why would the prosecuting attorney try to get her to pull back from her story?
That's kept me up more than any other part of this book. My poor husband, every morning, he goes, "No, I can't go through this again." I said, "This is driving me crazy." So I thought, all right, if she looked out the window and didn't see Lizzie under the pear tree and saw that the barn door's locked, she knows Lizzie wasn't out there. I mean, Lizzie's testimony, her alibi while Andrew was being killed was she was out in the backyard eating pears and then went up into the loft of the barn. So obviously, if she didn't see her out there, the prosecution's not going to want her to mention it, right? Because that's going to help. I mean, other way around. That's why I thought if she didn't see her, that would help the prosecution. So wouldn't they want that? The fact that they didn't want it, that's the part that drove me crazy. And I kept thinking, what did she see that they want her to not mention? And then the only thing I could think of was while she was cleaning her window and looked down, that she may have seen the barn door open. She'd just gotten through cleaning outside, going back and forth to the barn, emptying water, getting fresh water, and Andrew was just paranoid about keeping everything locked. And if she'd forgotten to lock the barn door, which had been broken into twice in the previous months, she thought she'd get in trouble. I believe she hurried, knowing he's in the sitting room right there, hurried down the back stairs, went out, peeked in the barn, and put the hasp on and tiptoed back up to her room. Now, if she did do that, she's got a problem because that puts her down there right by a guy that gets murdered and at the barn where she may have been disposing of a weapon. Plus, if the defense says, weren't you washing windows at the front of the house during part of this time in the attic? And she says yes, they could say, well, how do you know that's not the time she was in the barn? So that's the only thing I can come up with that explains why Knowlton would lead her like that and not let her say she was up there washing windows. When they first brought her down to the police station, she blurted out, I don't think Miss Lizzie was outside at all. That's pretty telling. That's what she told Marshall Hilliard and Attorney Knowlton. She said, I don't think she was outside at all. I don't think she saw her out there. But if the barn door was open, that's something that could come back to get her. Or if the defense brought up she was not at the back of the house looking at the backyard the whole time, Knowlton might have decided it's not worth it to open that can of worms and put reasonable doubt in the jury's mind. Let's just leave it. That's all I can come up with. If you have a better one, I would love to hear it because that really drove me crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what a weird case. Now both mother and father are dead. Does Lizzie slip out of the house to try to pretend like she's come home later to find them? Is her sister coming? What goes on, and who finds who first?
Finally, she yells up the back stairs to Bridget, who did finally lay down for a couple of minutes after she finished the window. She'd only been up there, she said, 10 or 15 minutes. Lizzie yells up, Bridget, or Maggie. They called her Maggie because that's what the previous maid's name was. And they said, she said, Maggie, come down. Someone's come in and killed Father. Now, a lot of people have wondered, why did she alert her? Why not just get out of there or something else? And for one thing, John Morris was expected to come home for lunch, for dinner. I think she worried people were going to start showing up, and she's in the house. And so is Bridget. And I don't think she wanted to leave Bridget there with two bodies. They would have hung her. She's an Irish immigrant. Back then, the Irish weren't thought of very fondly. And so she has to hurry and get this over with. And Bridget comes down and says, what happened? And she goes, I need a doctor. Run for Dr. Bowen across the street. And she gets her out of there, and she comes back and says he's not there. And she says, well, go get Miss Russell. I can't be alone in the house. And she keeps sending her away. Her father had only been dead a few minutes, and instead of going out to the street where there's all these people to be safe, she stays right there, right inside the back door, right a few feet from where her father's laid butchered, and she's not afraid. I'd have been out of that house so fast.
Well, we say that, but in panic situations, it is amazing how parts of us will shut down.
Yeah.
You know, I'm terrified of snakes, and Tim can attest to this. When I was with my younger son in Winona, Minnesota, 20-some years ago, he rounded the corner and I came up behind him, and there was a snake on the sidewalk, and I froze. You'd think, as a father, I'd jump and grab my son. My son keeps walking towards a snake. Tim had to lift my son and then lift me and get me away because I just couldn't move. It was a horrific moment. So in those moments, not that I'm making an excuse for Lizzie, but I can understand the shock and awe of, holy hell, what just happened? I mean, in our minds, you're thinking, we're also used to Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. You see somebody hacked up, you get the hell out because you don't know where that person is waiting for you. But back then, would she have just been, would it look like an admission of guilt if she took off running?
For me, I'd have been out front screaming my face off.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, I think that's a reaction a woman would be to just, she saw him.
Maybe she felt like there were already enough people in that house with their faces off. Sorry, touché. Too soon? Too soon?
No, touché.
Okay.
So that was the first thing I read when I was in junior high. That was the first thing that stood out is I'd have been out of that house so fast.
Yeah. Well, but then here I was stuck in there with creepy haunting weekend and I stayed. I don't know.
Well, you had a storm to deal with.
Yeah, well, I was sleeping in a notoriously haunted home. Okay, this is done now. This show's just flying by. After this happens, they originally think it's the uncle. I mean, he's looking all vagrant-y. He doesn't have a bag. He's just pops in the day conveniently before the murder. Did that mess things up for Lizzie as well? I mean, I've heard tales that maybe she and her uncle were in on the deal. Did you find anything to possibly support that theory?
I found why they thought that. She was following John everywhere he went, from New Bedford to Westport to Fairhaven. She was trying to see what was going on with this land deal, and he was moving 80 Mustang horses around to keep them from the police seeing them, and they were going to move them all over to Andrew's Swansea farm and start a big cattle and horse business. And she's following. So, yes, the police thought, this is weird. They're always in the same place at the same time. But what they didn't realize was she was following him and trying to find out what was going down. So yeah, originally they did think they were both in on it, and they asked John that on the stand.
Okay. The murders have taken place. The uncle is first to be cast under the investigative eye. When does it suddenly turn to Lizzie?
The lies. Okay. By the end of that day, the policemen are comparing notes and they're going, something's wrong. Something's wrong. You tell me how a girl could be up in that loft, as stifling hot as it is, for 20 to 30 minutes eating pears. And then Officer Medley went up and there were no footprints in the dust. And there was a thick layer of dust up there. There were none. So they're catching her in one lie after another. The Fleet went to Marshall Hilliard, who was running the show. He goes, I don't like that girl. He said, and then when he mentioned her mother, they're interviewing Lizzie in her bedroom. Abby's body is literally, you know where that is. It's literally a few feet away in the next room. The policeman mentions her and says, mother. Lizzie snaps at him and says, she is not my mother. She's my stepmother. My mother died when I was 2, and takes his head off. This woman's body is right there. And so all these warning signs went off and all the lies she was telling. And then, then it started shifting.
All right.
They kept John under, they followed him everywhere he went. They didn't let him go yet.
Well, and I'm sure at this point they're thinking there's also no way this little woman could be. Oh, there we go. See, I told you there'd be screams at the right point at some time. That my neighbor kids are going ballistic. I'm recording from home this week because of the Easter holiday week, and as soon as we get into the meat of the creepy story, I've got neighbor kids out there. Blah!
You're paying them. I know.
Wish.
This is a sound effect.
No, it's just shock collars. I'm hitting a button every time I need the good sound effects. So no, you don't, folks. You don't have to send me an email. It's not an EVP. It's not Lizzie trying to come through to us telling us that she's here. It's just my crazy Tuscan Raider neighbors outside howling away, I guess. All right, so she's kind of her own foil in the again, you would have thought she'd thought this enough through that she would have had some alibis built and would have been strong enough to stand by them, but yet she's making all these brutal mistakes.
Well, her whole plan fell apart. Andrew came home early. I mean, she had to go to Plan B twice. Plan A was to kill him at the farm. That didn't work. Plan B was to poison him at home. That didn't work. In the morning of the murder, she's just winging it. And I gotta, my hat's off to somebody that could do this and not completely fall apart. And she was so calm and calculated, and it's just chilling.
All right, so at what point is it now we believe Lizzie did this?
Well, by the time they brought her in for her inquest testimony, and it was a complete mess, by then they were convinced she did it. And she was held over for the preliminary hearing. So by then, I think John was breathing a sigh of relief. But she was also this kind of person of society. What was the public outcry in the Friends of the Bordens? Were they saying, no, there's no way this could have happened, there's no way Lizzie was involved in this? Oh, it was horrible. Knowlton got hate mail. The prosecuting attorney, the suffragettes, the women's movement, all these church organizations Lizzie'd served on, they came after him. This is an outrage. What's interesting, though, is the Borden relatives, the hoity-toities that lived up on the hill, tried to distance themselves from her. They circled the wagons when this happened, and it was, a real board wouldn't do this.
Was this more of a, we just don't want to be associated with this muck and mire, as opposed to believing that she actually did it, though? Yeah,
I think that was a lot of it. They were embarrassed. I mean, the Bordens were a big name in that town. Mm-hmm. But there were the rich Bordens on the hill, and then there was Lizzie living down in the middle of a business district and livery stables.
Okay. So, all right. She starts going through the court proceedings. They're unfolding the story. How are these blatant lies? How are these ill-conceived constructions not showing off and blatantly showing off in court, destroying her credibility?
They never got another shot at her. The inquest was the only time she testified. She didn't take the stand in the preliminary hearing, the grand jury, or the Superior Court trial. And her inquest testimony was not allowed in. That's what I mean. If the planets had ever lined up for somebody, that was the only shot they got at her, was at the inquest.
Was there a chance that the reason she was being handled that way, was there conspiracy behind it because she was from a wealthy family? Do we believe that the judges may have been bought and the courts were being manipulated that way?
The Superior Court trial was for sure. The judge that sat on it, Lizzie's attorney for the Superior Court trial, which was a year later, was Governor George Robinson. He had put that judge on the seat. The judge was a judge because of Governor Robinson. In earlier years, he'd given him the judgeship. And so they said the judge's charge to the jury at the end when they tell him to go out and deliberate. He literally put the prosecution's case or the defense's case and almost told them, she didn't do it. You can't find this woman guilty. Even the papers the next day said the defense didn't have a better person on their side than the judge. It was the weirdest thing you've ever seen.
All right. So now the court proceedings are going. They're hearing all this. They can't use the inquest. So to the public, is she starting to look better and better and innocent?
Yeah, at times it fluctuated. It went back and forth. People started feeling sorry for her when they brought in her father and stepmother's skull. I mean, there were some times where the pity went out to her. And in the end, and I do think a lot of it was because of the judge's charge to the jury. Also, the police mucked it up. They couldn't decide on the murder weapon. They found no blood on her dress because she turned in the wrong dress. They didn't have it. It wasn't beyond a reasonable doubt, and they let her go.
Now, once she's free, what is the public court of opinion? How are people treating her in town? Because you would think at this point you'd move the hell out of Dodge and restart somewhere else. She moved down the road not too far. And
well, yeah, that shows you this narcissistic, stubborn, sociopathic mind. I've always wanted to live on the hill with the other wealthy Bordens, and by golly, I'm going to do it. And she and Emma bought a mansion on the hill called Maplecroft, and she moved up there with the rich Bordens like she'd wanted to her whole life. And the thing is that's so cool, and I nod to Parallel Lives that the Fall River Historical Society wrote. They have in there that it didn't stop there. There were bizarre things going on at Maplecroft, neighborhood burglaries, things that were stolen that Lizzie coveted. I believe she broke into 4 of her neighbors' homes and took things. And every time a burglary happened, she ran away and hid at a hotel in D.C. It was very weird every time. And then strange fires started breaking out.
So we think she went from murder to breaking and entering?
Oh, yeah. That's all part of the mindset. The thrill, the I don't want a hand in my face. 2 of the people that were robbed were people she was mad at. She was feuding with the first lady she stole from. That's what I mean. This case just gets stranger, and then the buildings that she and Emma inherited from her father, 16 fires. 16.
Did anyone around her after the deaths of her mother and father, or stepmother and father, did anyone ever die a mysterious death again?
No.
All right, so she kept her serial spree to 2.
As far as murdering, well, she got what she wanted. She got all the money, and she got her house up on the hill. How
did it affect her relationship with her sister, who I believe she was very close to, correct?
Yeah, but it started unraveling. I think Emma hoped when they finally moved up to the other house, they'd live a quiet, because the court of public opinion was against her. A lot of people thought she got away with murder. Emma just wanted to live a quiet life, but Lizzie didn't. She partied, and she went to theater, and she lived it up with all the money she had. She was one of the first people to buy expensive cars and go tootling around. And the neighbors did not like having her there. She was a curiosity. People would come by and even tour groups would come by and point at the house and go, "There's Lizzie Borden." And the neighbors hated it. So she became one of the loneliest people in town, and Emma finally couldn't take it anymore. There were parties going on in the house that she didn't approve of, and some other things, and she finally moved out. For the first time in her life, she left her sister behind, and they didn't speak again until up till their deaths. And they died 9 days apart, which is really odd. Emma's 10 years older, and they died 9 days apart.
Who died first?
Lizzie did.
And what was it that finally took Lizzie Borden out?
Oh, gosh. There was something with her stomach, I think. She had some issues that they took her in, and she just didn't recover from it. And I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it had to do with her stomach. Oh, shoot, I'm embarrassed. I don't dwell as much on that.
Right, that's the least important part of the story. But her sister did die 9 days later.
Yeah, 9 days later.
Strange.
It is really weird. Lizzie died at Maplecroft, and I got the biggest gift of my life when I was out there finishing the book. The owner of Maplecroft, it's not open to the public, let me stay there 2 nights. And what a gift. I mean, the house is so incredibly gorgeous. She did such a great job of bringing it to life, and you feel like you're in the Gilded Age. It's just gorgeous.
What was it like there? I mean, we'll kind of backtrack. You stayed in Maplecroft. Was there any activity? Did the owners talk about it being haunted at all?
She played it down a little. There's a few things, doors shutting, things. She didn't really want to talk about it that much. There's the darkened hallways. That era had a lot of darkened hallways, and you do feel kind of strange. I stayed at Lizzie Borden house too, in Lizzie's bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
and felt more going on at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast than I did at Maplecroft. But there's a sense, there's a presence, and you don't know how much of it is you know?
Right.
A preconceived notion that there's going to be atmosphere in here. But anyway, I've stayed in a lot of very haunted places, the top 10 most haunted places in the world, and it's kind of unnerving when something's poking you and you can't see what it is.
There's some jokes there I'll leave alone today, but
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, I can pull back on occasion.
I appreciate the restraint. Go ahead.
All of this research, the thousands of pages that you went through, if you had to pick, what would be three of the most shocking pieces that the world just does not know about the Lizzie Borden trial?
The dress. It's the tale of three dresses, actually. But this is just amazing. During the inquest, and Knowlton, and this is only shot at her, gets her on the stand, and he says, and he blew it. He absolutely blew it. He said, when you were in New Bedford, you bought a dress pattern. You can see her testimony completely stop. She's been so staccato and one word after another and polished, and he caught her off guard because she didn't buy a dress pattern. She bought cheap dress fabric, and he got it wrong. He's a man. He confused it, and she jumped on it. She went, what? Oh, yes. And he said, where is it? At home. Where at home? In a trunk. Where's the trunk? In the attic. Is it all made up yet? Oh, no, sir. Meaning, it's been cut up and made into a dress. And he says, describe it. It's for a pink and white striped wrapper and a blue corded wrap. And so she literally described the two dresses the dressmaker had made the few months before the murders. And he didn't get it. He didn't get any of it. He handed that to her. If he'd said dress material, where is it? She's screwed.
Right.
Because she did have it made into a dress, and she wore it over the murder dress, but he completely got it wrong.
Did he ever realize that, or how?
He sent Fleet, the officer, to go get it. And Fleet shows up at the house. By now, they're holding Lizzie at the Fall River police station. Emma comes to the door. They ask her for it. She gave them some excuse. I'll have to go look for it. Now the preliminary hearing's underway. They still don't have it. And Knowlton's getting mad, and he goes, go back over there and get it. We have to have it. He goes back over again, and Emma gave him some other excuse, and he still doesn't have it. In the middle of the preliminary hearing, he goes, I demand that be brought here. All of a sudden, this dress pattern envelope shows up. He peeks in it and says, all right, I'm satisfied that this is what it is. I mean, what's he going to do? I think she went out and got another brand new dress pattern and stuffed it into the envelope that Lizzie described. What's he going to do? Unfold it in the courtroom and try to piece together a dress?
Right.
That's what I mean. The planets aligned for her. He completely got it wrong.
Do you think her sister knew?
Oh, yeah. Emma lied. She lied on the stand and covered for her. They did 5 searches of the house looking for that Bedford cord dress that was supposed to have paint stains on it and all of this. Never found it. That's because she wore it the whole time through another dress. They searched the dress closet over and over, never found it. And so Lizzie burns the Bedford cord dress the Sunday after the murders because the night before Hilliard and the mayor come over and say, I hate to tell you this, but you are suspected. Uh-oh. She thought they'd go out looking for a murderer. She can't keep wearing this dress.
Right.
So she burns it Sunday morning while Emma's standing there at the sink. Only problem is Alice Russell walked in and saw it. And so she said, well, look, see, it's got paint all over it. It's just this, I don't want it anymore. That's what we do. We burn our dresses when we don't want them anymore. And it's just, so that's what I mean. It's a tale of three dresses. The Bedford cord with Abby's blood on it, the one she had made in New Bedford to wear over it, and the dress she actually handed over to the police, which was a totally different dress. There's three dresses here.
Okay, so the dress is kind of the big one for you, this whole story. What were a couple other really just shocking bits of information for you?
The farmhands getting sick and John lying about being sent over to ask how they were. That was an aha moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the biggest one, and I'm very proud of this, for 125 years they have been trying to find who the two men were that were at the Borden house the day of the murder and a few days before on Monday. A man sitting in a buggy across from the Borden house on Monday said two men pulled up in a buggy. He watched the one guy get out, go up to the door and ring the doorbell, and Andrew opened it. He said what stuck with him was what the man was wearing. He had long trousers with a dark stripe down the leg, and he was wearing baseball shoes. This is 1892. He said russet-colored baseball shoes. So the man went in, talked to Andrew, and left 10 minutes later. Andrew had asked John to send him over someone to oversee the new farm operation for the cattle. Here's the thing I'm really, really proud of. And the guy mentioned that this guy had really pale skin, sallow complexion. I went through, I don't know how long, on Ancestry.com because I knew everybody being brought into this big Swansea deal was a relative. So far, they were all relatives, and there was a lot of them. And I thought, if he sent an overseer to Andrew for the farm, it's got to be a relative. And I went in every back door, every which way, and finally, and my husband was out through the screen door right behind me. I went, oh! He comes running in. He said, what? And I said, baseball shoes. And he said, what'd you find? And so the guy in the baseball shoes played for the Kansas City Cowboys, and I know you're going to run with this, the Salem Fairies. Sorry, I just write the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was John Morse's cousin. They were the New York branch of the Morses. It was John Morse's cousin. In 125 years, people have been trying to find who this guy was on his front porch. The Kansas City Cowboy colors were russet brown. And the guy that showed up to pick up Abby that day was also very pale-skinned, and I think it was James Chatterton, who was the baseball guy. I think it was his brother Joseph, and I think they were both coming in to be part of this new cattle deal. But I am very proud of that. It took a lot of research. I don't think there's any way in the world that can be a coincidence. Everybody on that deal was a relative of John's.
Well, we're all... Oop, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my sound keeps dropping in and out. We're very proud of you. I mean, that's an amazing find 125 years after the fact to be able to dig that up. And that's got to be why Fall River is standing behind you on something like this.
Thank you, Dave. That means a lot to me.
Well, yeah, that's really incredible stuff. All right, and what's the last aha moment for you want to share? I know we don't want to give everything away in the book, but what was one other one that really stood out for you?
I'm still bugged about Bridget, what she saw out the window. But I think it was sending away the wrong items to be tested for poison. That's a huge one. How can you be that dumb? If they were poisoned on Tuesday, why would you send away Wednesday and Thursday's milk that hadn't even come yet? So there's things like that. Boy, I'm trying to think. We've been talking about a lot of stuff.
Well, let's turn it to the haunting.
Right.
How soon after the murders did the legend of the haunted Borden house start popping up?
If you ask the Fall River Historical Society and a lot of other people, they said it didn't really start. Well, that's not true. The people that moved into the house after Lizzie and Emma moved out, they owned the house still, Lizzie and Emma. They had it renovated into 2 flats and rented it out. And the first tenants were asked if there were any ghosts. And they tried to shrug it off, but there were ominous little hints here and there, but it wasn't, I think, until it became a bed and breakfast and the remodeling started and they would find, snippets of the old original wallpaper and trying to bring it back to the crime scene photos the way it looked, that things started happening. And you hear that a lot when something's under renovation, when it's messed with. But a lot of people talk to me about what they've experienced at the bed and breakfast.
Did you have any personal experiences there?
I did not. I was there one night. I did not. And the thing is, you can't expect paranormal to be on demand. And I think that's why reality shows have a tough time. It's I got to turn out another show next week. Not to get off topic, but the most haunted place I've ever written about was Limp Mansion in St. Louis. And I heard gunshots in the hallway and something kicked the bed and sat on my feet. There are some very, very haunted places. And I think the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast is one of them. The amount of stories that poured in. And that there were a lot of consistencies, shadow figures on the second floor hallway, voices at the top of the stairs where Abby was killed, somebody sighing in their ear. There were a lot of people that turned in similar stories, and that gives it credibility.
I went there with no preconceived notions. I knew what it was. I heard the ghost stories. I went in to just have a good time. Although the first night I slept in the Abigail Borden murder room. And I woke up with my arm hanging over the bed. And man, did I pop that sucker back underneath the blankets quicker than you could imagine. And I'm like, why? You're a grown man. And I'm like, but I don't want to feel her reaching up for my hand. So, the second night I moved into Lizzie's room and stayed in there kind of hoping and I really had nothing ghostly like happened there. We did after the storm blew through, and I don't know if that was the ionized air or what, but we started having some weird experiences. People actually showed up to the house, and the owner goes, "Dave, I don't know what to do. I don't have any of my employees here. It's hurricane. And I said, well, I'll take them through the ghost hunt. I'm here. You're letting me stay here for a couple days. So I led them through some ghost hunts, and we went into the murder room of Abigail Borden, and I turned on my radio shack hack thing, which I know is still controversial when it comes to ghost hunting. But when you get something that's really good, it's really good.
Yes.
We set the recorder on the floor next to the radio. We'd done some EVP. We were getting nothing. And I laid the recorder and the radio on the spot where she died. And I said, can you please tell me your name? And I'd asked some other questions. But in that moment, when we play back the recording, and I'm trying to get the recorder fixed. It blew out on me a while ago, but the files are still there. So I'm trying to get it fixed so I can remove the files. You hear the of the radio, and then you hear my voice go, can you please tell us your full name? And you hear the and all of a sudden this voice goes, Abigail Borden.
Are you serious?
Yeah, right into my recorder.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really astounding. It was like mind-numbingly chilling to hear that. We got no other responses up there. We got some downstairs where they stored the bodies in the dining room, right? After the murders, that's where they drew and kept the bodies there for a while. We had some weird knocking noises, footsteps. We had lights flickering. Now, granted, it was a stormy time. There could have been power issues, but it was like all while we were trying to engage this stuff. It didn't happen any other time. So the house to me it's got a creepy vibe. No doubt about it because of the history and the thousands of people that have gone through there trying to have something happen. So I don't know how much of it is real ghost and how much of it is the energy we've all left behind hoping to have something happen.
You know what? I hope I hope mysteries like this are never solved as far as paranormal. I like not having all the answers.
No, you don't.
But you're right.
You don't. You went through 5,000 pages. You read through them 3 times. You found people that nobody else could find. Don't lie to me. You don't like mysteries. You want to know everything.
Okay, fine. I love Perry Mason. Are you happy now?
Dun, 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 dun.
No, but that's mystery. And if we bottle and label and tag all these ghostly things, it's no fun anymore.
Right. Yeah.
No, I like. I mean,
place.
people tease me. You go into these haunted places and stay there alone. And until I got married a year and a half ago, and I said, until then, yeah. I said, it's the living that scared the bejubies out of me.
And I love the fact that the owner doesn't even sleep in the house. She sleeps in the makeshift apartment above the gift shop outside because it's so weird in that house. She's had phone calls. While she's in there, she'll have phone calls from the house come to her cell phone, and there's nobody in the house.
Wow.
She's had voicemails left. And I know we got there shortly after Ghost Adventures had filmed, and she goes, you've got to see this. And she takes me in and shows me the window. And in the basement, something like out of Amityville, hundreds of flies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a bizarre moment. And she's like, Dave, it's been really active around here. And I think she's got a voicemail or two from inside the house as well. You'd have to reach out to her and ask her about that. But, very interesting lady, and she's just a sweetheart.
Yes, she is. Leanne has worked so hard on that place. And the tour guides have had things picked up on their cell phones.
Right.
Danielle Cabral and Sue Vickery and Rick Bertaldo, they've all had stuff like that.
Yeah, it's an astounding place, and it's an amazing piece of history that still remains. And I recommend to people, if you get a chance, go there. We may have to do another Darkness Radio event at the Lizzie Borden house. It's been many years, and I think I'd like to go back again. We had a great time, and it was just a bizarre set of circumstances. But again, I will not wish to be stuck there for a couple of days, because once the event's over, I want to go home. Next time, I don't want to be there in the middle of a hurricane season, although I will tell you, it was terrifying. She took me down to the cemetery after the hurricane hit. There were trees down, power lines down, everything.
Oh, wow.
It was so freaky. There were beautiful old headstones shattered because of the branches that had fallen down. And Lizzie's gravestone was covered by this massive branch. We had to pull it back so I could get a picture of it. But there was a lot of damage. And she changed her name, correct? At the end, what did it turn to? Lisbeth. Yeah, boy, that'll trip people up, right? Why did she go from, what was it originally?
It was Lizzie. She was christened Lizzie when she was born. Yeah, it wasn't Elizabeth. She was born Lizzie. And I think she just wanted to change her after she'd gotten in with the theater group and felt important. And, she changed it to Lisbeth of Maplecroft. So.
Interesting woman.
Yes, I think it's a chilling look into a sociopath's mind, and some people don't agree with me that she did it, but with everything I found, I can't see how there's any other conclusion.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this tale with us.
Thank you,
Rebecca. It's fascinating, the history and haunting of Lizzie Borden, and you can find her at RebeccaPittmanBooks.com. We'll have a link up on the site so you can check it out there as well. Fascinating stuff. So this is your launch point, kids. This is the last time you're going to hear a true crime-like story with paranormal ramifications on Beyond the Darkness. For now on, Tuesdays, you're going to have to go download Beyond the Darkness's True Crime Tuesday show. That'll just be a standalone show every Tuesday, 90 minutes of true crime and dumb crime, stupid criminals. I hope you'll continue to keep up with that. We always have fun with that segment of the show. But this was a great way to do our last official kind of paranormal crime show, Rebecca. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Today's episode is brought to you by Birch Gold Group, the company I trust with precious metal purchases. Again, that's Birch Gold Group. Make sure you educate yourself, folks. You can't let others make your decisions for you. You can't just assume that everything's going to be all right. So get their free comprehensive 16-page kit that reveals how gold and silver can protect your savings and how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into precious metals IRA. To get your no-cost, no-obligation kit, go to birchgold.com/darkness. That's www.birchgold.com/darkness. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.